These sessions that I brought to you every Tuesday are meant to give you insight and knowledge that you can use directly after this session. We do this surrounding the 4 pillars that we believe leadership creates, and the pillar today is change. We've got 2 people speaking to us in just a couple of minutes, and their topic of today is leadership solutions that are sustainable in themselves. I'm sure the 2 speakers will clarify that title and elaborate on the subject. Today we've got on our webinar Paul Bessems. Paul Bessems is the chairman of Wikonomics, he's CEO of WacoNet Technologies, and he's also a tutor at Business Netherlands. And we also have, as a reflector today, Alexander Heikamp, who is the owner of ESG Consultancy and also connected as a tutor in our programs at Business School Netherlands. Paul, may I ask you to kick off?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Twan, and Annette for having me today. Nice to see so many people. For me, it's early in the morning. Some of you may be late in the morning, but I'm going to take you on a little journey about the team. What Twan already talked about is solutions, but also leadership that are sustainable in themselves. And maybe the first question is, are they not? So the most solutions we develop within companies, and think of CSRD, for instance, or GDPR, are they sustainable in themselves? Are they future-proof or only compliant? So I'm going to share my screen with you, with your permission. Maybe the bleeps will stop in a moment, or you can put them out because it's distracting a little bit, but let me share the screen with you. Okay, Twan, the screen is visible for you? Then it's visible for everybody. So it's about leadership and solutions that are sustainable in themselves. And as you know, currently, currently more and more organizations, they have to comply with ESG regulations, so environment, social and governance, as you know, and to be more specific, for instance, with CSRD, so the Corporate Sustainable Report Directive. And most organizations do this by developing KPIs, for instance, within their own organizations. So they are adding functions on their transport management systems or warehouse management or HR, but those systems are local systems. So if you put facts in a local systems, that's not a shared reality in a supply chain, for instance. So most organizations, they create their own reality. And if you look at CSRD, for instance, and maybe you know that, CSRD, you have to report on 3 scopes. So for instance, you have your own carbon emissions, that's scope 1. You have the emissions of the energy supplier, and up and downstream, the assets you're using, they have to be made and dismantled. So you have to comply with CSRD within the supply chain and not only within your own company. So what I do is I work with projects and startups that are trying to be compliant and future-proof in themselves. So that's what I'm going to elaborate on. And if you look, for instance, and I think we can establish that, is that we are a kind of in a liminality, what's called. It's also called the meanwhile. In Dutch, it's the ondertussen. So I think most of us know already is that the old system does not work no longer, but the new system is not clear enough yet. So we are in a kind of liminality. And what you see is that there are all kinds of challenges in our society. And I think we need new and brave leadership to deal with those challenges. And one of the challenges already mentioned, that's CSRD. It's to comply with new regulations from Europe, but also, of course, the technology. And we all know the quick developments of the AI, especially the generative AI. But we also have some other challenges, of course, climate change. And what you see is that the old way of organizing things doesn't solve these kinds of problems. So what we really need is to look ahead And what I'm going to elaborate on you the next 10 minutes is how can we make that new system more clear by changing our perspective on organizing things by brave leadership, using the relevant technology, and of course, as Twan already mentioned, is the transformation. So I'm going to elaborate on those 4 points with you the next 10 minutes. And I'm going to start with the change of perspective. And change of perspective means that you're not only living in the here and now, but also in the there and later. And why do I mention that? Probably you also heard of the tragedy of commons. Most organizations, most states, or most people, they live in the here and now, so that they take care of themselves and in this time frame. But to deal with climate change, of course, we have to think of the consequences of the acts we do today. So you have to change your perspective from here and now into there and later. That's the first thing you have to do. Second is, if you only look at your own organization, your organization is not the center of the universe. So most organizations see themselves as a center. Something comes in, that's a supplier. Something goes out, that's a client. But when they automate, for instance, they take themselves as starting point. And you have to leave that behind. You have to take the whole chain, the supply chain, into account. And also very important is the change of perspective if you look at automation. Automation, information technology started in the second half of the previous century. So it was derived from our factory. So the physical flows, and then the automation came. So the DNA of information technology is basically the DNA of factories. And within factories, we have all kinds of departments with local systems. And now we need systems that work on supply chain level. So you have to leave the factory DNA, what we call the dominant logic, you have to leave that behind. You have to think from, I'm not the center of the universe, but I'm part of the universe. So most companies, they work on their pearls, what we say. They want to make their pearl beautifuler, but nobody is working on the pearl necklace. And now it's time, especially if you look at climate change, is to start thinking from the supply chain perspective. So what we do in a lot of projects is going from local IT systems, think of CRM, HRM, transport management systems. So if I talk about bookkeeping systems, it's not only about financial reporting, but also about other KPIs like carbon emissions. So you have to make what we call a shared secured ledger on supply chain level. I'll come to that later when I'm going to talk about the relevant technology, because we have already technology to operate what we call a shared ledger, not on corporate level, but on community level. So one of the examples of brave leadership and change of perspective is, of course, Abraham Lincoln. This is a quote of him. And Abraham Lincoln, he was the first American president that was killed during his period, but it was also kind of liminality, a meanwhile, because it was the time of the Civil War, for instance, the industrialization in America and the abolition of the slavery. So that was also the second half of the 18th century, a kind of new thinking, a new way of acting. And that's why I'm using this quote a lot. Abraham Lincoln was somebody who was a brave leader who changed the perspective on organizing things. So brave leadership is the second focus I'm going to elaborate on. And brave leadership, courage leadership. And courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the judgment that something else is more important than fear. So we need brave leadership. And one of the things a brave leader needs is what we call future wisdom. And UNESCO, they call it future literacy. So we as humans, we have a very important capability. We can imagine something that's not there yet. So we can vision our future. We can vision an idealized design, for instance. And we need that a lot. So we have to vision what will our world look like in 2050, for instance. So that's what we call future wisdom or future literacy. Second, for brave leadership is to find a new balance. So for instance, the balance between doing well and doing good. So you have to do well to do good. So you have to earn enough money, for instance, to do good for society. But it's also the balance between short-term, long-term, between innovation and exploration. So a brave leader finds a new balance in how to develop a strategy, for instance. Third, for brave leadership is an important question is, are you a floor mopper or a tap turner? So if you walk into the kitchen and the floor is wet, what are you going to do? Are you going to mop the floor? Or are you saying, well, what's the cause of this water flow, and going to turn down the tap? So we need, of course, people who do not only work on the effects, but go back to the root cause of a problem and solve the root cause of the problem. So that's also brave leadership. And finally, I want to elaborate a little bit on William Deresiewicz. Maybe you heard of him. He wrote an interesting book called Excellent Sheep. He's an old Yale professor. And I think it's also important for your college, because what he said, well, college mostly is seen as it's not the real world, but it's exactly what it is, because college is a period between the autocracy of your family and the career requirements. And what he saw on especially Yale, but also other universities, is that we prepare students for the real world, and the real world is in companies. So we prepare students for the old world, because companies, they are organized with dominant logic, with factory DNA. So nothing changed if we still develop students to work in the old world. So William Deresiewicz talked about excellent sheep, and excellent sheeps are what he called people who are very well in organizing within the system. They make predictions that come through because they are very saving, but they don't have the ability to question the system. So they are very well in working within the system and keep other people in the system, but are not so good in question whether the system is okay or not, and for who is it okay. So that's why I'm very excited about his work, because it's learning us also how do we look at curriculum of or university of colleges, for instance. So third I'm going to elaborate on is new technology. Of course, if you have change of perspective, if you have brave leadership, you also need relevant technology to build that new world. So go back to CSRD. You have to report within a supply chain, so not only within your company. So you can't work within your own IT systems. So probably you have only one date of birth, but your date of birth in the Netherlands is on average in 400 different IT systems. So that's the question. Why is something there's only one of, your date of birth, in 400 different databases? It's because we take the company as starting point with IT. What we do in our organization and our project and startups, we take data as a starting point. So it's called data-driven organizing. And a lot of organizations tell me we already work data-driven. And my first question is then, do you have your own bookkeeping system, or your own HR system, or CRM system, or TMS system? And mostly the answer is yes. Say, well, if you have your own IT systems, you work company-driven and not data-driven. Data-driven is totally different. You take the data as starting point. And what data-driven organizing means is determine facts, then store facts, make them available, and enrich facts, for instance, with HI. So the first step is you have to determine facts. Did something happen or not? Did the carbon emission happen or not? And you can use sensors for that. And you have to find consensus whether something happens or not. But once you find consensus that something happened, you have to store it in a way that not one party can change it unilaterally. So for that, we are using shared ledgers, or also blockchain technology. A shared ledger is a ledger where you store facts you find consensus on, and you can't change facts afterwards or unilaterally. So you create what we call a shared ledger, a shared reality. And if we have a shared reality and make it accessible for other people, then we trust each other. Now, at least 30% of our time, we are just asking questions to each other. And you just ask another person a question where you don't know the answer yourself. If you create a shared ledger, we also call it rich data, then you can ask questions to that data set. And we all know the power of generative AI. If you have rich data, you can let AI ask questions to the data sets to verify a claim. Are you 18 years or older? Do you all earn 50K or not? You can ask the data set a lot of questions. So after that, you have to access the facts. So once you store them, you have to access the facts. And to determine your age, whether you're 18 years or older, you don't need the date of birth. So there is a technology, we call it zero knowledge of proof. You can verify a claim without revealing the underlying data. So think of the Corona app. Are you tested? Are you healed? Or are you vaccinated? Yes or no? So it's a yes or no question. So that's why we use zero knowledge proof technology. And finally, you have to enrich that data. And you can use AI for that. So with sensors, you can find consensus about the carbon emission in the supply chain. You put that fact on a shared ledger of the supply chain, and afterwards you can report from that shared ledger with AI, for instance. So that's relevant technology. And put this all together, IoT, blockchain, AI, you have a kind of physical assembly line. And we all know you have a digital assembly line. We all know what the physical assembly line did in factories, decrease the amount of people we need in factories, and the digital assembly line will do the same in offices. And then maybe your question, and now I come to the transformation, your question will be, what will the people do in offices if they're not needed? If we have AI, for instance? Well, I think we as humans can do better jobs. We can do better jobs in our closely environment. So that's the relevant technology. The technology is already there to halve office work within a generation, for instance. That's our ambition of our Wikonomics Foundation. We want to halve office work within a generation. But we need transformation for that. And the transformation means not only be compliant on the short term, but also be compliant and future-proof. And we have a lot of solutions for that. One of the solutions is, for instance, double track. What you can do is you have legacy systems in your organization. You have to maintain them. You have to update them. But you also can make a plan to phase them out. Peter Drucker already wrote about that in 1964. If you make a system, you have also to make a plan to phase it out. Planned abandonment, he called it. So that's double track. You make a plan to abandon the legacy systems, and you start today with innovating, for instance, in the digital assembly line. So you make an idealized design. How will the world look like in 2050? And from that idealized design, you go back today. You call it backcasting. And everything you do is in the direction of your idealized design. And we also use community model canvas. So business model canvas, we all are familiar with that, comes after a community model canvas. So first you establish what is your function of your company in the supply chain. So therefore you use the community model canvas, and then you use your business model canvas. So to come to a conclusion, your job will not be taken by AI, but people who understand the transformation better. So yes, if we use AI, good, but that also counted for blockchain, for cloud, for internet, new technologies, but we didn't become more productive with those technologies. So it's not about the technology, it's about the question, what are we as humans going to do after office work? So that's the big question. So transformation is very important. We have to rethink leadership and of course management, but also, and I elaborated on it a little bit more, is how do we organize data as basis for trust, for our work, for economics, but also organizing data is very important for the energy transition. It's very important for climate change. So we know everything about supply and demand of physical processes and assets, but we know a little bit about the question, how to organize supply and demand of data. And that's totally different than organizing physical supply chains. So I hope you understand that. It's about organizing data. And you can I have only 24 hours in my day. I think you also have. And you can choose between spending that time in repairing the past, but you cannot use that in building the future. So repairing the past is only, you have legacy systems. Maybe you have to be compliant and you have to maintain your system and upgrade it, but you also have to make a plan to phase it out. And you can start today by innovating, for instance, by innovating the digital assembly line, which is compliant and future-proof in itself. So thank you very much. Hope it helped you a little bit further. And I think now it's time for Alexander to reflect on this talk.
Thank you so much, Paul. And indeed, it's off to Alexander to reflect on your presentation.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you very much, Paul, for your interesting presentation. Great job, if you ask me. A lot of information to digest. The main takeaway and learnings I have is if you really want to get into the supply chain, or I rather like to call it the value chain of a company, and work together with that value chain, like your suppliers and your customers, etc. It needs to be built on trust and a real partnership within that value chain. I think there's a real a great challenge to do, because looking at companies and people within the companies, leadership within companies, they are all taught in some kind of capitalism way, earning money next week, next month, doing your own stuff and making sure that your own P&L next month is okay-ish. And now we are asking organizations to look further, which I totally agree, look further within the supply chain and build some, as you called it, a really nice word, a shared reality. So very interesting. Looking at the different stages within your presentations, you started with change of perspective, and from here and now to the there and later. I really like that mindset. It demands a real change of our mindset, from economics to Wikonomics, and I even think you called one of your companies like that. Let's do it together and create an impactful movement with your stakeholders and your value chain partners. And doing it alone or for yourself only, it's not good enough. I really like that sentence. But that really needs brave leadership, the second part of your presentation. You mentioned doing well or doing good. You have to do first well, and then you can do good. I think it's starting to a little bit to get combined, because if you're not doing good at all, so only looking at your own P&L and your profit and losses, you're not going to attract new talents and you're not going to attract new clients anymore. So it's not a matter of first doing well, in my opinion, of course, and then you can do good. No, it's combined already, and only possible while you connect all the stakeholders like employees, your customers, suppliers, and the community, and do it together. And then the most difficult part, in my opinion, of your presentation was the relevant technology, because we all know that data garbage in is data garbage out. And in my opinion, that's the most difficult part of the challenge we are facing. How do we define which data is relevant? Is that business-wise relevant? Is that looking at positive impact on both environment and society relevant, or climate relevant? That's, I think, something to define first. What is relevant data? And then secondly, how can we make that joint shared reality on the data within the value chain? And last but not least, you talked about transformation programs. I was thinking, if we take this really serious, we shouldn't call ourselves CEO or sustainability directors anymore. I think we are all Uber change managers, because we need to change the way we work, we live, the way we travel, and we have to help each other because it's quite difficult and challenging. But the aim is to make the world a little bit a better place, and it needs trust and change, and that's what I've learned from your presentation. So thank you again, Paul. Learned
Welcome.
a lot, and compliments.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you so much, Paul. It's now time for all of you to ask questions if you have got some. I see Leroy raised his hands, and that's the way to do it. So I'm going to ask Leroy to state his question in a moment. You can also put your questions into the chat room. Leroy, can I ask you to state your question?
Unmute first.
I was basically clapping for him, but if I'm going to ask a question, I will ask the question on his. The presentation is beautiful, and my question is on he used the phrase "the time spent to repair the past cannot be used to build the future." Does it mean that we are to focus on the future without considering the past, or are we to use the past as a base to learn some lessons that could be used to transform the future? It's something that's of interest to me, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, it's correct. It's about changing perspective, but also using historical perspective. So you can know a little bit. You know a lot about the future if you know the history, of course. So you have patterns, etc. But what I exactly mean is repairing the past. And repairing an old car, which only is going to use for the next year, for instance, and you don't take time in how I'm going to travel after that year. So your time is limited. You have to choose. And if I have to choose, I would say, well, I'm not going to repair the past. Of course, I'm going to learn about the past, but I'm going to try to, what I also called is to make a plan to abandon the legacy systems we use now. And the legacy system, what Alexander also told, legacy systems are within the company. It's, of course, it started in the second half of the previous century. So IT was derived from in the department of physical processes, and that dominant logic you have to leave behind because it's an end. It's a one way and it stops somewhere. So yes, you have to learn from the history, but don't put too much time in repairing history, because that time you can't use for developing the future. So I would maintain the history. I would update it if necessary to be compliant for a couple of years, but also make a plan to abandon. You could say it's not bad history because the previous era was about producing more and more prosperity. And the factory DNA did that very well and a very good job. The operating model of the factory is very good in increasing our productivity and prosperity. But now I think it's time to organize a more sustainable prosperity. So not more, but sustainable. And to do that, you need another operating model.
Thank you so much, Paul. Olusola, I see you raise your hand. Can you state your question?
All right. Thank you very much, Paul. Mine is on the area of the brave leadership, and my attention is on my focus is on the future wisdom, and I want you, if possible, to link it up with the transformation program. Why I'm saying that is LB was able to pick some of the concern, but so I have to drop that. So I want you to just help me out in linking these two together. Because when you look at future, I like that we are future wisdom. I love it so much, the concept. But how are you going to talk about something of maybe 2050, and how are we going to use that to transform whatever strategy that we have in place? If there's any way you could throw more light on that, I just want to hear from you on that.
Your question is how you can build a new strategy for maybe a sustainable world?
Yes, using the brave leadership, as a future, using future wisdom under the brave leadership.
Yeah. So future wisdom, UNESCO is for UNESCO. It is very important. So also they're trying to transform that into policies for education and curricula. So it's very important that we as humans can see things that are not there yet. You know, of course, the famous quote, some people see things that are, and some people see things that are not, and say, why not? So we can imagine an ideal world, and it's a world where there is no carbon emission anymore, and if there is, it will be helped with other solutions. So imagine that idealized world. We also do that in our solutions. So we do a lot of hackathons, for instance, and we say to a group, this night your IT systems were destroyed and you can't fix it. So you have to come up with a new IT system, and it's an idealized system. So it's a very strong incentive for people to imagine an idealized world. And then it comes also to the question, idealize for whom? Is it for my stakeholders, for myself? And that's where the new perspective comes in. If in the idealized design, and we use that for strategies, if in that idealized design you take your own perspective as starting point in the here and now and not in the there and later, it's not sustainable in itself. So strategy change means, for instance, don't take your own company as starting point, but take the value chain, as Alexander called it, or the total community. That's why we work with community model canvas. We have, for instance, a lot of solutions are about visualize your processes in your company. We say, well, start with visualizing processes in the total value chain. And then you immediately see waste. And with that solution, you have to answer the why question. Why are you putting this process in this value chain? And companies say, well, that's my business model. I earn money for that. Well, that's not a reason for the end customer. So you have to, you have to be clear about what is your function in the total picture. And I think the best strategy for the next 10, 20, 30 years is not only look at your own perspective, but also from the value chain perspective. That would be a good strategy.
Perfect, Paul. Thank you so much. Oki, you have a question.
Thank you very much. I have a question regarding being data-driven. And I noticed you talked about the possibility of unifying data so that we don't repeat things and waste data, as it were. So, but I'm concerned, doesn't that expose our company to hacks and vulnerabilities? That's the first question. And then secondly, if you think about it in the wider world, if we all, basically have one data source and we depend on that data source, doesn't it make it easier for people who have an agenda, like terrorists, for instance, to take control? So that's my question regarding being data-driven.
Yeah, good question. My question to you is, do you have a bank account?
Yes, I do, and sometimes it gets hacked.
And do you trust your money in the bank? Do you trust whether it can be stolen easily or not?
Yes, I do worry about it being stolen, but of course I don't have any options for now. Maybe I might do some crypto.
You can put it on your cushions at home. So
yeah, but then I'll have to get a gun and sit at home.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that, for instance, your bank account, and there are all kinds of attributes in a kind of database. It's very secure. It's very difficult to hack that, and it's not that. If you look at data-driven organizing, you organize logically seen one reality, and that doesn't mean that your attributes are stored on one server. Typically, if you look at blockchain, it's stored decentral. For instance, it's very difficult. You can hack a server. That's very easy compared to hacking a protocol, and the protocol knows where your date of birth is, where your social security number is, and you can compare it with, and now we have a truck with all laptops in it, and a thief wants to steal the truck because he has a client for all those laptops. In the new world, on a server, there are thousands of different attributes from different persons. And if you steal the truck, you have laptops in it, clothes, shoes, food, all kind of different. And no thief is interested in the content of that truck. So organizing data decentral is very powerful for hackers. It's made very difficult for them to hack it. So that's, I think, I didn't mention it, but I see the future as durable, that's sustainable, durable, digital, but also decentral. And decentral is very important. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Also to look at the power of tech companies, of course. But that's another question. That's also important, I think, from our European perspective, is how do we look at the power of tech companies from America and from China, for instance? Sorry, Tom.
No issue. Happy that you gave this answer, so it makes stuff a lot clearer. This also brings us to the end of today's webinar. So as promised, we're going to close down at 10:08 sharp. So that will give you some time in the rest of this day to think about what you've heard this morning and to perhaps make a start of implementing that. Thank you so much all for joining in. Next week we are back again, start at 9:30 again. And on next week, Good Morning BSN, it's all about change management again. And the topic of that session is going to be, is your organization change ready? It's presented by Carol Ariyibi, and the reflector of that day is going to be Tony Pregavi. So looking forward to that session again. Hope to see you all again. Hope to meet you all again on this Zoominar next Tuesday. Thank you for now, and thank you, presenters, for your great presentation.